Talking boxing, as always, with our guy Robert Exel, the editor-in-chief of Boxing.com, because we cut Britton Harden totally out of the equation. No, Britton is working today. Unfortunately, he cannot come into the studio. But we do have Robert Exel, the original, on TYT Sports. Robert, firstly, how are you today, my friend?
I'm good. Yourself, Rick?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Let's get into this fight. Victor Ortiz was knocked out 259 into the second round against Luis Collazo. Collazo, of course, from Brooklyn. He is 32 years old, the southpaw against Victor Ortiz. Now, this is the second time, Robert, that Ortiz's good but not great career has been derailed. He was supposed to fight Canelo Alvarez. It was supposed to be a tune-up fight a few years ago when he fought Josecito Lopez. Thus, Lopez broke his jaw in 2 different places. But this is the second time now that we think that Ortiz is going to come through in the clutch, and he just does not. Now, a lot of the criticism has been, did he quit? Firstly, Robert, let me ask you, did Victor Ortiz quit?
I would not jump to that conclusion. I also heard those charges. Social media was awash with it. Victor Ortiz quit. He's a quitter again and again and again. But it's sort of like a bad echo chamber. I don't think he quit. He got nailed. He got nailed by a punch he didn't see. Granted, he was on his knees. Possibly he could have used the ropes to pull himself up to beat the count. But none of us were in Victor Ortiz's head. We don't know what it was he was seeing or not seeing. I think it's as likely as not that the Barclays Center was swirling around his head. But he got nailed. He got seriously nailed. So to call that quitting, I don't know. Easy for us on the outside to say that he quit, but being inside the ring, I wouldn't jump to those conclusions.
So Robert, Ortiz is 27 years old. He has beaten Andre Berto, though he does have a few notable losses, mainly to Floyd Mayweather Jr., however you want to put it. Legal sucker punch, not a sucker punch, protect yourself at all times, whatnot. And then, of course, he lost to Josecito Lopez, as we just indicated previously. He had a draw against Lamont Peterson. He lost against Marcos Maidana. Is this the sort of fighter that you would classify as a good prospect, a lot of potential, but just can't come through in the big fight?
Well, I think he's beyond prospect. I mean, because he has peaked. A prospect is somebody who would be sort of coming up and has this bright future in front of him, whereas I think Ortiz has probably already peaked. I think he's a very good fighter, but he's not a very great fighter. And boxing needs very good fighters so that we can determine who the very great fighters are. And Ortiz sort of fits into that category. Always gives it his all, always comes out to fight, but again, he has certain limitations. I think we saw some of those limitations last night. He was very assertive, very aggressive, very offensive-minded, but in being as offensive-minded as he was, he sort of forgot about defense. And to forget about defense in a boxing match can be critical to one's career, and the results sort of indicated that Ortiz is not in a good position right now. Whether he moves his career forward or not is kind of the question.
Luis Collazo, meanwhile, I indicated previously, from Brooklyn, 32 years old, so this was his home at the Barclays. He has some really notable losses to good opponents at the time, Ricky Hatton, Shane Mosley, to name a few, although he did lose to Freddie Hernandez. But Collazo stated, post-fight, to Fox Sports 1, and I quote, "I want Floyd. Come to Brooklyn. I'm sick of going to Vegas." Incredibly bold because, in my opinion, Floyd Mayweather Jr. would never go to Brooklyn unless it was guaranteed that he would make $70 million, $90 million, $100 million. It has to be guaranteed that he would make bank to not leave Vegas. It's incredibly bold. We know, at least you stated previously off the air, that it appears Maidana might be the next opponent. I mean, it's total fallacy and it's ridiculous, but just for the sake of argument, there's no chance that this happens, correct?
I don't think there's any chance he's going to come to Brooklyn to fight Luis Collazo. I mean, that's the part that seems unbelievable. There has been talk about him because Golden Boy's got a big Barclays Center, so there has been talk about him wanting him to fight in Brooklyn, but presumably if he fights Amir Khan next, and that's sort of up in the air. I mean, he might fight in England. I mean, there's so much talk surrounding Floyd Mayweather that it's hard to know. It's hard to sort of see the forest through the trees. Everybody wants to fight Mayweather. I mean, that's basically. I mean, he's the goose that lays the golden egg. Everybody wants to fight him. So it wasn't surprising that Collazo called him out. But it would be really surprising if Mayweather went to Brooklyn, especially to fight Luis Collazo.
We'll get to Victor Ortiz again in just a moment, but for Luis Collazo, ESPN was basically giving their opinion, the boxing section, basically saying that the next fight for Luis Collazo could be Keith Thurman, it could be Marcus Maidana, it could be Adrian Broner. Which one of those would you like to see?
Well, I think, which one would I like to see? I mean, I suppose I would like to see him fight Keith Thurman, but I don't know that any of those opponents are going to be men that he can beat. I would almost prefer that he starts maybe maybe travels laterally, then moving up that way. I mean, he sort of returned from the dead. I mean, he suddenly is on people's lips, or at least some people's lips. I don't know that he wants to sort of blow his momentum by fighting somebody like Maidana or somebody like Thurman. Broner's a possibility, but Broner has his work cut out for him with Maidana, so we don't know where Broner stands in the general scheme of things. So we're going to have to wait and see.
Now, let me ask you this last question. Victor Ortiz is 27 years old. He has some really notable losses, as we indicated previously. Oscar De La Hoya, his promoter, has really got his back. He brought him on Piers Morgan. He has promoted the shit out of Victor Ortiz's fights, and now he chimed in on Twitter saying that Victor Ortiz should retire. Do you agree or disagree with what De La Hoya has stated publicly?
It's hard to just agree offhandedly with what Oscar states, especially on Twitter, because he says so much on Twitter that is really not meant to be taken seriously by anybody except him. Why does he want Ortiz to quit? Is it because Ortiz is no longer bankable? Is it because he's worried about Ortiz's health? Is it because he or Golden Boy is interested in dropping Ortiz? I mean, it's hard to know exactly what his motivation is. And until he clarifies that, I can't really reach any conclusions. I think Ortiz should continue fighting. It's what he does. It's what he does best. It's what has sort of salvaged his life. And again, if De La Hoya is concerned about Ortiz's health, I mean, I tip my hat to him and more power to him for recognizing that and acknowledging it. But who knows really what De La Hoya means.
So here's my final point on all of this. I really do like Victor Ortiz. I know that a lot of people in the comments are going to completely disagree with me, but here's why you should like Victor Ortiz. He had an incredibly rough upbringing. It seems like he really does care about the sport. There's this criticism that he quits. He didn't quit against Floyd Mayweather. As a matter of fact, he was on the attack again, and after that was his complete downfall in the sport. He seems like a good kid. It seems like he cares about the sport. He cares about, well, his well-being, but he just seems like a good fighter who just has run into shit luck over and over again. I'm rooting for him. I hope that he stays in the sport and turns it into a positive instead of a negative and loses his next fight, whatever that may be. He's only 27 years old. Luis Collazo's 32 years old. It's not like he doesn't have time to turn this around, but maybe he just needs to push it that extra mile mentally. I really don't know. I'm not inside his head. We're drawing these conclusions from even being outside of his entourage. But me personally, I'm rooting for Victor Ortiz, and I hope he makes a stellar comeback. Robert Exel, the editor-in-chief of Boxing.com. You can follow him on Twitter at boxing_com and follow his great writing at www.boxing.com. Robert, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Rick. See you soon.